lovely weekend, and it's lovely to have you back for another story. Today I'm going to read you a book called How to Be a Viking by an author called Cressida Cowell. Now you might recognise some of the characters in this book because the main character is a little boy called Hiccup. Now if you've seen the movies How to Train Your Dragon, you will recognise that there is a character, the main character in those movies is a boy called Hiccup. Well, those movies, How to Train Your Dragon movies, are all based on Cressida Cowell's books. And she wrote lots and lots of books about this little boy called Hiccup and his life. And then they used those stories and they turned them into the dragon movies. And so here is one of the very first books Cressida Cowell wrote about Hiccup. And it's called How to Be a Viking. Long ago, in a fierce and frosty land, there lived a small and lonely Viking. His name was Hiccup. Vikings were enormous, roaring burglars with bristling moustaches who sailed all over the world and took whatever they wanted. But Hiccup was tiny and thoughtful and polite. The other Viking children wouldn't let him join in their rough Viking games. Hiccup was frightened of spiders. He was frightened of thunder, and he was frightened of sudden loud noises. But most of all, he was frightened of going to sea for the very first time next Tuesday. Hiccup wasn't sure he was a Viking at all. Hiccup's father was Stoic the Vast. Whenever Stoic walked, the ground trembled, flowers wilted and bunnies fainted. He hadn't brushed his beard in 30 years. Only girlies brush their beards, boomed Stoic the Vast. Girlies don't have beards, Hiccup pointed out, but no one listened to him. And when Hiccup told his father he was frightened of going to sea, Stoic just laughed, his enormous Viking laugh, until the salty tears ran down onto his enormous hairy feet. You can't be frightened, little Hiccup. Vikings don't get frightened. And he sang the Viking song. I have blacked the 1,000 eyes of 1,000 angry gales. Watch me knock the cockles off the biggest, bluest whales. I have given warriors nightmares. We thought that they were strong. I marooned a huge typhoon on an island off Hong Kong. Oh, ancient prawny greenness, the never-ending sea. Mess with squirmy jellyfish, but don't mess with me. He patted Hiccup on the head and went off to do 300 press-ups before breakfast. Oh, poor Hiccup. It all sounds very dangerous. So Hiccup went to see the oldest Viking of all, old Rickly himself, whose barnacled beard fell down to his toes. Your saltiness, he whispered, for Hiccup had beautiful manners. Do Vikings ever get frightened? Oh, little grandson, whispered old Wrinkly, and his breath was like being kissed by a mackerel. I've been wondering about that question myself. The sea is full of trials and terrors, but it is also full of marvels and miracles. Go to sea, and you can see and tell me if Vikings ever get frightened. So, at 9:15 on a breezy Tuesday, Hiccup went to sea for the very first time. There he is, with his dad. At 9:30, Hiccup was wishing he hadn't eaten those two smallish haddock for breakfast. At 9:45, he was feeling very peculiar indeed. And at 10:30, he wished he was dead. I feel seasick, he said to his father. Vikings don't get seasick, said Stoic the Vast. But this one was all over Stoic's feet. Hiccup got sicker and sicker, and the storm got wilder and wilder. Stoic the Viking sang the Viking song at the storm, but the storm took no notice. And a great wave came and soaked him. One mighty wave picked up that whole Viking ship as if it were a matchstick, and it threw it 50 miles to the south. And one mighty blast from the gale picked up that whole Viking ship as if it was a piece of seaweed and threw it 50 miles to the west. And a terrible black wind went shrieking all over the lonely ocean and turned that Viking ship upside down and inside out and went shivering down every Viking's spine. "We're lost," said Stoic, the not-so-vast after all. And a funny thing happened. His face began to turn a greenish colour. And he thought of the 37 large haddock he'd had for breakfast, and his stomach began to heave. And then all the Vikings turned a pretty green colour, and all their stomachs heaved, and with an almighty rush, they ran to the side. "Well, well, well," said Hiccup. "It appears Vikings do get seasick." And immediately he began to feel better. "This direction," shouted Hiccup. But the Vikings were too busy being seasick to steer the boat, so Hiccup took charge. And a funny thing happened. The more he steered, the better he felt. As he headed for home, that stormy wind filled the sails, and the boat skimmed over the ocean at 1,000 miles an hour. Out of the depths of the sea came shoals of flying fish and leaping dolphins and whales with horns like unicorns. There were eels that lit up like light bulbs and nameless things with enormous eyes that, nobody had ever seen before, all following Hiccup the Viking as he steered that ship at a tremendous speed towards home. "Nice breezy day," hummed Hiccup as he steered the ship into the harbour. "So tell me," said Old Wrinkly, and his old whelk eyes may well have been twinkling, "do Vikings ever get frightened?" "Sometimes they do," said Stoic the Vast. "But they get over it," said Hiccup the Viking, "and that's what makes them so brave." Vikings sometimes get seasick. Wasn't that lovely? A really nice introduction to meeting Hiccup for the first time when he was a really little boy, long before he met any dragons. Thank you for joining me today, and I will be back for another story on Wednesday. Bye-bye.